This right here is the most dangerous setup that I've seen in a very long time, and I've been in the stock market for about 10 years now. It's called the volatility trap. 2026, as we all know, our portfolios have been bouncing around like crazy. Various stocks go way up, various stocks go way down, and as a typical retail investor just trying to sit here and make money with stocks and options, it's like, what the heck do I do? Let's take a look at the chart. So there's various companies up here on the top left. I know it might look like a cluster F of things on this chart, but I intentionally put various companies up here. Maybe some you know, maybe some you don't know. But all these companies have something in common. The stocks got beat up a lot. A lot of these companies like Strategy or SoFi or Archer Aviation or Celsius, Hims, Hood, Palantir, whatever. A lot of the meme stocks, the stocks that people talk about on YouTube, on X that go so far up to the moon and then they come crashing back down to earth and then a lot of people lose a lot of money. A lot of volatility like we've been talking about. Just take a look at this. This stock right here. This is MicroStrategy, down 65%. Take a look at this one right here. HIMS, down 65%. And this is a 6-month chart, by the way. 6 months, the stock fell 65%. How could that be? How could it be possible that these amazing companies that everybody was pitching online are now getting absolutely destroyed? Meanwhile, take a look at this Lone Ranger line right here. Guess what this line corresponds to that is up 5% in the last 6 months? Steady Eddie right here. This is the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ did 5% in 6 months, which honestly isn't really much. Meanwhile, you're getting massive dumps, massive declines in all the retail popular things that a lot of people like to buy. So here's the part where most people go wrong, and I'm just going to keep it real with you guys right now. Most retail investors, when they see stocks going up, like the things that we just looked at on the chart right there, the SoFis, the Palantirs, the Hims, the whatevers, everybody's talking about it. There's buzz for it. Everyone's excited. They're getting FOMO. They don't want to lose out on making all this money. They want to retire. They're going to go buy all these call options, sell all these put options, buy all these shares on margin. And then what happens? Those same retail investors, the YOLO at the top, had all this conviction like, oh yeah, the stock's going up. It's going to keep going up. They got crushed. The S&P and NASDAQ had a little bit of volatility. When that got volatile and the market went down a little bit overall, the sentiment flipped to negative. When the sentiment flips to negative on something that is priced to perfection with a lot of euphoria behind it, those stocks get crushed, which is these stocks right here. They got absolutely destroyed. Again, down 65% in 6 months. That's going to be pretty hard for most people to recover from. Meanwhile, if you would have bought the brainless thing of the NASDAQ, you would be up 5% right now. Literally, $100,000 would be $105,000 in a NASDAQ, but $100,000 would be around $35,000 right now in these things down here. Think about that. That one mistake that you made because you got greedy and you got euphoric and you wanted to get FOMO and buy the top, you got crushed and you got smoked. Like, take a look at my account right here. This $1.2 million account, you guys know that I've been experiencing a little bit of volatility in the last few months in the market. But guess what? It's not like I'm getting crushed. It's not like I'm down 65%. This portfolio is essentially at all-time highs, and I do net withdrawals from this portfolio monthly. So when you understand that, you allocate to great companies at good prices, and honestly, most of the companies on this list right here, I don't even like any of them down here at these prices. I still think that many of them are overvalued. So you were buying up here when they were full-blown bubbles. Now they're cheaper but still a little bit expensive. It's like retail investors get this stuff all wrong. Let's take this a little bit further. And then after that, we're going to talk about exactly how you could fix your portfolio right now to not have to worry about the day-to-day volatility of all this craziness right here that we were talking about. All these crap companies at crap prices with no moat, no pricing power, no durable competitive advantage, no trying to predict where the market's going to go in the short term. Like, to me, this looks like a bunch of mumbo jumbo. I don't know about you. Maybe you're Houdini and you could predict short-term market movements, but you're going to realize in the long term that you're not good enough to do it. I'm not good enough to do it. Warren Buffett is not good enough to do it. Almost nobody is good enough to do it. So you're going to realize that making bets on that and using magnification, which is what stock options are, you're making a magnified bet on something you have no clue what's actually going to happen. It makes no sense to do it. So let's go into this right here. I'm just going to show you the one thing that I've shown you before, and it's going to build into why these high beta companies are getting crushed so much. So this right here is the earnings per share growth line we talk about a bunch of times on the channel. Go watch my other videos if you want to learn how to do it. But the point I'm getting at is this is a 5-year chart of the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ right now is a little bit above it. The NASDAQ is a little bit expensive. So not only are you making all these bets on these high beta, high volatility, speculative meme stocks, you're doing it when the overall NASDAQ and S&P valuation are a little bit expensive. So when the S&P and NASDAQ fall, it's going to bring everything down with it. I try to tell you guys this all the time, but nobody believes me until the dip actually comes and it's like, oh yeah, maybe market valuations are a little bit expensive. Maybe it doesn't make sense to allocate to these crazy companies like I've been doing. Maybe you've been making money the last couple years doing it, but all it takes is one dip and one crash to wipe out all of your gains that you made in the last couple years. Take a look at this chart right here. And honestly, like before we go to the dip that we got right now in the S&P and NASDAQ, dude, it's nothing. It's like a 5 to 10% dip. It means nothing. It's totally justified and needed. So we take a look at the pink line right here. This, by the way, shows you the forward price earnings ratio level for different types of markets right here. Pink dotted line right here is going to be the Mag 7. The red line right here is going to be the S&P. Then there's going to be like small cap and mid cap S&P down here also. Here's the thing about it. Going back historically, like this whole period right here going all the way back to 2000. Remember, 2000 was the dot-com crash. You can see that back then the S&P P ratio was somewhere around 24. Right now we were at like 23. Now we're around like 21-ish. So we did come down a little bit. But still, looking at this entire time frame, valuations right now are still a little bit elevated. So our future expected returns for the market, they shouldn't be amazing right now. So when we're getting all this volatility, it's coming at a time that the market just doesn't know how to price things. That's why the market's going up and down so much. One day we're like, okay, AI is the next big thing. The next day it's like, oh my God, capital expenditures are so high, AI is the worst thing ever. We're never going to be able to get an ROI on this AI spending. AI is not efficient, but then the next day it is very efficient. So it's like when a new technology comes out with something like AI and it's transforming everything, there's always going to be a lot of volatility in the stock market. And predicting when those volatility swings are going to come, where like the stocks we talked about earlier, some of them are down 60% plus, it's hard to really know exactly when that's going to happen. So we've all heard the saying, an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure. That's what we're going to talk about right now so that you don't get yourself stuck in these sticky situations, being in these super volatile markets and carrying the bag down on these crazy companies. So we're going to go through a few different examples right here. We're going to go through Palantir first, the big bad Palantir. We're going to talk about how you could do a little bit of due diligence and not get yourself stuck in that situation of carrying something down a lot. Let's take a look at this. Palantir's revenue growth, 56% year over year, which is very, very strong. Earnings per share growth, 83% year over year, which again is very, very strong. There's no debating that. The growth is amazing on Palantir. This is revenue growth charted right here. It's almost parabolic. And earnings per share growth right here, it looks very good. It just kind of looks skewed a little bit because it's coming off of a negative number then going positive. But overall, the revenue growth and the earnings per share growth is very, very strong on Palantir. But just simply saying you like Palantir and it has really good growth, that is not enough to say it's a good buy. A good company is not always a good investment. You have to separate those two things right there. We have to get a good company with good growth at a good price. Palantir checks 2 of the 3 boxes. We have a bad valuation on Palantir, 180 times trailing earnings. Essentially what that means is, we have my water bottle example I go through all the time. You're basically paying $180 for this water bottle business, and it's generating $1 per year in profits. Think about that. Let it click in. I'm not going to say anything else about it. So Palantir's valuation is definitely expensive, but of course it's a great company. But I don't think you have a good margin of safety to enter Palantir right now. So this volatility that we're getting on this chart, it's justified. And buying right here is kind of like potentially trying to catch a falling knife. It's going to be hard to know where the stock's going to go. And one of the most important things before we go into the next company is that as an investor in the stock market, you have to be okay to just say, I don't know about something. Like, it took me many years to realize that I don't know everything and nobody knows everything. But with Palantir, I just don't know. I don't know if it's going to be able to grow into that valuation, and I don't know if that growth is going to continue. AI is evolving so fast, the tech sector is evolving so fast, it's kind of like a lot of euphoria is still priced into that stock right now. I don't have a deep enough margin of safety to allocate to that. So Palantir is a no, in my opinion, to allocate still after that dip. Now let's go to the big bad SoFi. SoFi, revenue growth, 38% year over year. Pretty good revenue growth. Earnings per share growth, 192% year over year earnings per share growth. But when you see a big difference right here between earnings per share growth and revenue growth, it's like a disconnect. It's like, why is that EPS growth so good? And if we go look at the EPS growth for SoFi, you'll notice that they're coming off of negative numbers and then they're compounding. Like, just look right here. Q4 of 2025 is 13 cents. If we go to Q4 of 2024, it's 5 cents. You're just going up from 5 cents to 13 cents. It looks like it's a huge percentage gain. But when we do this in a year from right now, you're going to see the earnings per share growth start to taper and not grow as fast. And at the end of the day, I know a lot of people are going to give me crap for this, and you can comment below what you're saying against this. But SoFi, at the end of the day, It's a bank. It's a fintech bank that's growing really, really good, but they're spending a lot of their top line revenue on advertising to try to grow the platform. That is fine, but price is what you pay and value is what you get. Earnings per share is growing good. Revenue is growing good. But just like Palantir, the valuation is bad. Even after this drop rate here where SoFi was up, above 30 bucks per share and now it's below 20. The valuation right now is still expensive in my opinion, because if we compare this to something like a JP Morgan Chase Bank, they're trading at like 15 times trailing earnings, 1.5, not 51, 15. And you're like, well, SoFi is a way better bank. It's way more, growing faster, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, is it 4 times better than Chase Bank? Is it 4 times more value you're willing to pay? Like again, water bottle example, $51 you're paying for it, you get $1 in profits. Chase Bank, you're paying $15 for it, you get $1 in profits. It kind of puts it in perspective when you look at things like this. It's like, maybe I am still paying too much. Maybe a lot of retail investors did make a lot of money on this pump right here, but it's like, maybe they're going to lose it all back right here too. You got to get a good company at a good price with good earnings per share growth. Oftentimes, if you look at valuation, it's going to roll out like 95% of companies because most companies are not table pounder opportunities. You have to be very selective with this stuff. And I guess before we jumped into the examples, I should have prefaced it with like, the number one thing that moves the price of a stock in the long term is earnings per share going up and to the right. The goal is to buy a good company at a good price with good earnings per share growth. So the two companies we just talked about, SoFi and Palantir, they have everything except a good price. The next two companies that we're going to talk about, I think they have all 3 boxes checked and they are good to allocate to right now. Let's flip over and let's talk about it. Okay, the next one we're going to look at, which is a buy in my opinion, is going to be Meta. Look at the revenue growth, 22% year-over-year revenue growth. Earnings per share growth, 24% year-over-year earnings per share growth. You're going to be like, well, Brandon, that's slower than Palantir. That's slower than SoFi. But if we break this down a little bit and not overcomplicate and keep it very logical, it's like, why is their earnings per share growth not that much? They're spending 30 to 40% of their revenue on capital expenditures to build out their AI data centers. What happens when they monetize that? And what happens when that capital expenditure goes down as a percent of revenue? It's going to boost earnings per share. It's going to boost the profits because they're spending less money and then making more money. So revenue is going to go up, expenses are going to go down, and then earnings per share is going to go up too. They're going to be more efficient within the business. So that's a bullish tailwind for Meta in my opinion, and it's trading at 21.5 times trailing earnings. Water bottle example. You're buying a water bottle for 21 bucks. It throws off $1 per year in profits, and those profits are expected to continue to grow and accelerate going into the future. Which, hey, that is true for Palantir and SoFi in my opinion, but it's like you're getting in at a much better price rate here on Meta versus those other two companies we talked about so far. So I like Meta, but I'm not going to allocate to short duration option contracts. I'm not going to allocate to short-term holds on the shares. You need to give this stuff time to play out. As earnings per share is growing up and to the right here, you can see that the stock is following that and going up and to the right with a lot of short-term volatility. When you understand that the S&P and NASDAQ are a little bit overvalued right now, it's like, hey, maybe I need to give myself more time with these trades. Maybe I need a 1, if not 2-year option contract, like buying a leap call option or selling a 2-year portfolio secured put so that your thesis has time to play out. And even if we get short-term market volatility because the S&P and NASDAQ fall for whatever reason, you still have a good likelihood that you're getting in at a good company at a good price with good earnings per share growth. It's likely you're going to make money on that trade right there. And now the fourth one, which is NVIDIA. We got to compare this to Palantir because most people will be like, oh my God, NVIDIA versus Palantir. I'm going to pick NVIDIA every single time, or I'm going to pick Palantir every single time. Let's compare it. So you can see the top and bottom line we'll just say is roughly 60 to 65%. If we go to Palantir, it's roughly 80 and then 56%. So the growth is very similar for Palantir versus NVIDIA. But Palantir, you are paying 180 times trailing earnings. Meanwhile, on NVIDIA, you're paying 44 times trailing earnings. So which one would you rather have? Which one has a deeper margin of safety? In my opinion, it's going to be NVIDIA because you're getting a great company with moat, pricing power, durable competitive advantage, and you're okay to hold the stock for the long term because we think the AI data center build out is going to continue for many, many years with, of course, a lot of volatility in the short term. So you just have more margin of safety in that trade rate there. So when and if NVIDIA were to fall or Meta were to fall from these levels right now, we're going to have more conviction in holding those companies on the downswings, and they're probably not going to go down as much as something like a SoFi or a Palantir, because these valuations on SoFi and Palantir, like SoFi took a major hit, Palantir took a major hit because the valuations are very high to start. A lot of high expectations are priced in up here with a high P ratio level. When high expectations are priced in and something bad happens, the stocks get whacked. But take a look what's been going on with Meta recently. The valuation's already relatively cheap, and the stock just really hasn't been doing that much. And look at Nvidia. The stock really has been doing nothing at all. Meanwhile, earnings per share continues to grow and go up and to the right. So I do think that those two stocks are going to do pretty well in the coming years. And the market volatility, it's not really going to impact you because, again, you're allocating to a good company at a good price with good earnings per share growth. When you do that and you give it a couple years for your thesis to play out, you're likely to do very, very well in the long term. And that's exactly what I do right here. I've scaled to a few $1,000,000. I've been beating the market since before COVID. I show all my ROIs in my previous YouTube videos. I show it every now and then. I don't want to annoy you guys with it. But it's like, this system works. It's boring, and it's not what most people do, but also most people don't beat the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ in the long term. So maybe it's like what you're doing, and you look around, it's like you're doing what everybody else is doing, but nobody's beating the market. So it's no surprise that you're in that crowd and getting the same results as the crowd. You're putting crap in and getting crap out. You're stressing about the volatility. You're stressing about the day-to-day movements in the market. You're trying to capitalize on something that is impossible to predict, in my opinion. Buy good companies, good prices, hold them for the long term. You're going to do just fine. So that being said, the video is done. If you want to go watch a really good one about how my stock option system works, watch the video right here, and I'll see you there.